My name's Kat Bryant. I've been working with the Scleroderma Association for about 5 or 6 years now. I was diagnosed with morphia scleroderma back in July of 2006. So I've been living with it for about 14 or 15 years. I have the morphia scleroderma, which I was initially diagnosed with, then diagnosed with lichen sclerosis and inflammatory arthritis. And my initial symptoms were pretty much skin discoloration, which just looks like bruising, which then turned into the hardening of the skin pretty much all over my body.
Okay. Jessie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Jessie Ferguson, and I was born and raised in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, and I'm a product of 13 children. I trained as an LPN in 1968 and worked with that degree for 39 years. I retired in 2007, and in 2009, I was diagnosed with limited systemic scleroderma. I was referred by my family doctor to a rheumatologist, and my symptoms were sudden onset of very swollen hands, knees, and feet, painful to move. I had severe weight loss. I lost, nearly 25 pounds. I had muscle damage and muscle weakness. I developed chewing and swallowing difficulties, and have been living with scleroderma for 11 years. Thank you.
Ken, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Ken Rozee. I live in Glen Margaret, Nova Scotia. I was diagnosed with diffused systemic scleroderma in April of 2016 at the QE2 here by an internal specialist, Dr. Workman. And that was confirmed by my rheumatologist, or a rheumatologist, Dr. Evelyn Sutton. And then I also went to Baltimore to Johns Hopkins Medical Center and saw a specialist there. And they did some additional testing and came up with a subset of U3-RNP antibodies for brilliant. My initial symptoms for Raynaud's, cold hands, feet, swelling on my face, hands, legs, and feet. And I've been living with this for about 8 years.
Thanks, Ken. And Barbara, tell us a little bit.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara Carter. I'm on Prince Edward Island in Charlottetown. I have limited systemic scleroderma. I was diagnosed in 2001 by my family doctor, Dr. Linda McDonald here on PEI, who subsequently sent me to a rheumatologist for further blood work and investigation. My initial symptoms were very tight skin on my hands. They were swollen, red, limited movement, painful to move them, having trouble swallowing. I was diagnosed very quickly. I have heard from many people that it's sometimes taken them years to get a proper diagnosis, but luckily I had good doctors working with me. I was diagnosed immediately and treatment was started. I've been living with this disease for 19 years.
Thanks, Barb, and thank you, everyone. I'm going to move on to the next question. Scleroderma is not only a hard word, it is a hard disease, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally. What have been your emotional and mental challenges living with this disease? Kat, we'll start with you.
It started pretty early when I was diagnosed. I had a scholarship to St. Mary's for the soccer program, and unfortunately had to back out due to just treatments. And I started to, my joints were very sore and tight and a lot of inflammation. So I had to drop out of that program as well. I was a piano teacher for about 25 years, and due to the joint pain, I had to stop playing piano altogether. So a lot of my stress reliefs in sports and music kind of went away very quickly. So starting with therapy really helped me out. And then moving on to exercising as much as I can, getting out in the outdoors and doing as much as I can. That way it keeps my body moving as well as socially. It helps out quite a bit.
Great. Jessie, how about you?
My emotional and mental challenges were to do with fear. I had fear of dying with a terrible disease or a terrible death, fear of chewing and swallowing, a fear of anyone finding out that I had the disease, and a fear of the changes that I witnessed in my mouth and my eyes, my hands. And the most fearful thing of all was looking at myself in the mirror. I just was devastated and I hated that. And I think that's quite normal for people with scleroderma to feel that. And I could see the fear and the shock as I changed in my children's eyes, in my family, my brothers and sisters. You know, they would try, you know, hard not to stare at where I was going. I was shrinking. I was weaker, and they did and their very best, and they showed so much support, which was very helpful. And I managed my disease by learning to manage myself and to watch my reactions to it. And after I accepted this disease, I started making changes in my thought process, my diet, my physical activity. I started to reintroduce prayer and spirituality into my life. And I started reading self-help groups, watching videos on YouTube to meditate or help yourself. And actually, YouTube and family members became my lifeline.
Thanks, Jessie. Ken, how about you?
Yes, my this disease has changed my body quite a bit. I mean, the physical changes, I lost like 65 pounds, muscle weakness, the telangiectasias are to name a few, the loss of confidence in doing things that I used to do so easily. And when I was healthy, it didn't take a handful of drugs each day. I'm finding that, you know, the stress seems to be increased. I don't deal with stress like I used to, and I'm not sure if it's a part of my age or my health. I take one day at a time. Planning things ahead is really difficult because of my GI system is really affected. And so some days you're feeling good and you can do something, other days you don't want to get out of bed. Other days, if we plan to go to a restaurant, are you sure you're going to be able to eat something? You know, it's been a difficult journey, but we've learned to adapt, and my family is very supportive. And I manage some of my stress by doing things like skating, yoga. We do a little bit of kayaking, biking, maybe some gardening. So that's enjoy one day at a time.
Thanks, Ken. Barbara, how about you?
Taking a cue from Ken, stress, it is stressful. It's shocking when you're initially diagnosed. It's a disease that you don't know much about. I live on PEI. There was no support group here. I had to rely on the internet and what the doctors told me. And I know doctors in the medical field, they frown upon you looking up everything on the internet, but that's all I had. So I was quite isolated. with this disease, no one to relate to, and depending totally on what I read. And what you read is shocking. It's scary because they tell you the worst of the worst on the internet. And unfortunately, that's what I relied on. So initially, you're very shocked, you're depressed, you don't know what your disabilities are going to be in the beginning until they manifest, and then you do find out. My issue was with circulation. I developed severe finger ulcers. I have lost all 10 fingers. So my life changed drastically. I'm very limited as to what I can do. I depend on a lot of people to do a lot of things for me now. I was a dental assistant in my past life, where your hands are your work. And I was quite devastated to have to quit my job, and I retired earlier than I ever expected to. That alone was stressful, having to deal with the fact that I didn't expect to be unemployed in my 50s. I thought I'd be working well past that. So your life does sort of come down around you a little bit, but you do learn to deal. I have a very supportive family. My husband can cook and clean and better than I can. So he is my set of hands. There's a lot of things I can't do: zippers, buttons, jewelry, simple things that everybody else takes for granted are suddenly taken away from you. So you do learn to be patient, deal with your symptoms. I spend a lot of time with my grandchildren, and I call that my therapy. It gives me a chance to think about them instead of me.
Thank you, Barb. Kat, you're a young person living with scleroderma. What's that experience been like for you?
It was initially very difficult. I went through many treatments, light therapy at the VG, to taking methotrexate, both by needles and then just with pills. And then about 5 years ago, I started on a treatment where every 5 weeks I go in and get an IV of Remicade, which has helped drastically. But it takes about 2 to 3 days to really, you're tired, you're exhausted, it's hard to work for a good portion of your week. So trying to hold down a full-time job and everyday life, plus going through COVID and whatnot has been very difficult, but having a really good support system with family and friends and my niece and my sister has just been tremendous. One struggle that I have been having is trying to start a family, not knowing if you can have kids, what are routes that you can take. So that's where I am at currently, and hopefully in the next year or so can accomplish that. So, yeah.
Jessie, how are you coping during COVID? I know living alone, does that pose any specific challenges to you?
Well, coping with COVID, I have to say I was very lucky that I had my daughter, who was very willing to protect me at all costs. And she was very firm, kind, and protective. And, you know, she would take care of groceries and things. I never went out. And then I started cutting out my sewing machine, and I started trying to make a mask. And then I saw everybody doing them on YouTube. So that helped. And I had the material stored here. And then I started baking bread and cookies and muffins, and I gained 10 pounds. And I Zoomed with my family regularly, and I watched a lot more television and Netflix. But living alone, some of the things that will affect me is the biggest fear is choking. I live in an apartment, so I don't worry about somebody coming up and knocking on my door. And I am in the kitchen a lot. I always have very sharp knives. You know, sometimes I'm cutting. If it slips, I'll say, "Oh, you know, be careful. You know, you don't want to chop your fingers off when you're by yourself. You know, if you choke by yourself, 2 or 3 seconds, you know, count at that time." And another thing is maybe, you know, you might think you have to get on a chair once in a while to get up in a storage cupboard or whatever. And you do that very, very consciously. Because I would have to say, over the years, I have seen people that lives have been destroyed by the simplest of falls. So, no, I've done very well throughout COVID with support from family for sure.
Great. So are you to blame for the flour shortage that we experienced?
No, you know what? I had the flour and I had the yeast, funnily enough. But there was many people after that when I told family about, oh, I'm making bread. They couldn't get the yeast or the flour. It was gone quickly. I was lucky I had that stored.
Ken, men are the minority with this disease. What kind of support would you like to see in place for men living with scleroderma?
No, that's a good question, Michelle. I did have a hard time with that, but I wrote down a few notes here just to answer that. And I said, I'm very fortunate to have a loving and supportive wife, you know, who's worked in the medical field and understands a lot about the drugs that I'm taking and are using. And also we have a very supportive local scleroderma group. So I said, I'm not sure if I was a single person or a patient that with scleroderma, male, you know, maybe it seems like we all have different symptoms. So it's in requirement. So possibly maybe there's a scleroderma site that I don't know about or a group available that we can contact and really reach out to others. But, you know, I guess it's a man thing, you know, you keep everything inside and maybe don't reach out like women's groups do. So that's my thought. I'm not sure.
Thanks, Ken. So I'm going to, Barb, a question for you in terms of COVID. How have you, and now you're on PEI, so how have you been coping with COVID?
I'm very lucky to be on PEI because of COVID. We've been blessed to be on our little island and quite protected in that way. But we've still taken all of the same precautions as everybody else has. Me being autoimmune, it's my husband has been the shopper. He has been the one going for the groceries and doing any shopping that should be done, trying to protect me from going out any more than I had to. Definitely lots of time spent at home. Again, everybody tried their hand at baking. I have celiac disease, so I was trying all the gluten-free options and trying to whip up things that I normally wouldn't even dream of doing, but doing it simply because there wasn't much else to do. But for me, the hardest part was not seeing my grandchildren, being isolated from family. And again, back to being very fortunate to be on PEI. We worried, but we didn't worry like the rest of Canada and the world did. We've been very fortunate. We've had no deaths, no hospitalizations. So we do feel very lucky to be where we are, but at the same time, everybody's being very diligent, wearing your masks in stores. And I'm, again, because of having an autoimmune disorder, being extra careful, and my family the same way, making sure that, make sure dad goes to get everything, you're not going.
Yeah, thanks, Barb. So Kat, what has living with scleroderma taught you?
For me specifically, I don't have a lot of the symptoms that some people with scleroderma have. Most people wouldn't even know that I would have it unless I tell them. So I've have great respect for people who are struggling with chronic illness where you don't know anybody is dealing with what they have, but they're struggling internally, or even like for me, a lot of my symptoms are underneath like sleeves or pants or anything like that. So I hide it very well, but just knowing everybody is struggling with something different and being respectful and kind, like for that reason.
Okay. Thanks, Kat. Jessie, how about you?
Scleroderma has taught me to be more aware of people that have difficulty doing basic tasks and not to take your good health for granted. It can change at any time. And it taught me to join and reach out to support groups to learn from others with this disease. And I joined the Nova Scotia support group way back in 2011. I had to learn to reach out and get involved and participate in fundraising and learn to be an advocate for our research and development of therapeutics for our disease. And hopefully someday we can find a cure.
Thanks, Jessie. Ken, how about you?
What scleroderma has taught me? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
It's hard to say anything after Jessie just said. Took most of the words out of my mouth, but
Go ahead.
living with scleroderma has really taught me to try and enjoy every minute of every day, really. And that's, I think, the most important thing. I have been involved with some groups. I got involved with SPIN with Dr. Toombs in Montreal, and we did some videos on training groups for scleroderma and exercises and stuff. That was quite an experience, and it's kind of brought me out of my shell. And I, want to get involved, I guess, where I can to help other people. That's all I can say.
Very good.
And Barbara, how about you? What's scleroderma taught you?
It's taught me patience. And again, like he was saying, to be kind to yourself. Let yourself mourn what you've lost, but be positive about what you can gain. With me living on PEI, I've never had a support group. And this is what I'm trying to get maybe established here on PEI for the first time. I have never, until I had been introduced to all of you wonderful people at Scleroderma Atlantic, I had never met anyone with scleroderma. I was it, other than what I read about. So I knew no one. I had no one to talk to. So my family was all I had to talk to and to turn to, and they were very supportive. So it's taught me to understand the meaning of a support group and a support system, and to have someone to talk to and just to relate to. So I know that scleroderma is rare. 90% of people that I talk to here in my town, that they ask me what is wrong with me, they don't know what scleroderma is. So you feel like you have to re-educate everyone you meet as to what is actually your issue. So that it's taught me patience. You have to be patient with yourself and patient with others as well.
Those are good qualities. I'm going to ask a question about your healthcare professionals and teams. So how about Kat? Who makes up your healthcare team? And are you, do they work well together? Do you feel comfortable bringing whatever issues you're facing or dealing with to them?
Absolutely. My main medical professional would be my rheumatologist, Dr. Trudy Taylor, who is fabulous. I can contact her day or night, and she has really fought for me, especially with Remicade, and making sure that I do have access to that treatment. But I also have a fabulous family doctor, Dr. Judy McNeil, who, if I have any questions, I can go to her as well, and they work very well together.
Great. Jessie, how about your team?
My family doctor is Gina Burgess, and she was the one who picked up the problems that were occurring in my blood work from the inflammation and referred me to the rheumatologist. And I have the great Judy, our Dr. Trudy Taylor as well. And she gave, I'm sure lots of people, her work email address, and we are able to contact her at any time with concerns or questions, and you do get a reply. My rheumatologist refers me once a year to for an echocardiogram and a pulmonary function test and a respirologist. All those reports are shared to all of the attending care providers. I did see a cardiologist one time, and it was initial visit, and I won't see him again until there is some changes that occur in my echocardiogram. But I'm very happy with the care that I have been given by all my providers.
Great.
Thanks.
And how about you?
Yeah, I have a great team too. Leading my rheumatology is Trudy Taylor again. She is just out of this world, really. She's one in a kind. And then I have a GI specialist, Dr. Stacy Williams, sorry. And my family doctor, Morris Traeger, who actually fought for me to get in to see Dr. Taylor. I also visit a scleroderma center at the Johns Hopkins Medical Center in Baltimore, and I see a scleroderma specialist, Dr. Laura Hummers. And in both Laura Hummers and Dr. Taylor, is like we have a direct line to both of them, and they will, it's amazing. I can email them today and I get an answer in the afternoon. It's just, I can't say how much that's helped. The only thing I find with our, the QE2 system is great, but I don't find that even though the system has all my information there, we don't have a team like other areas of the country. I know in Calgary, they have a team that all sit down, the rheumatologist and the cardiologist and the GI person and whoever's involved in your care. They don't sit down and discuss you as a patient. But I've been satisfied with both the QE2 and Johns Hopkins. Getting prompted here. Anyway, no, it's been a journey, and I can't say enough. I mean, I don't think I'd be here today if it wasn't for these excellent doctors.
Thanks, Ken. Barbara,
You're welcome.
What's it like for you on the island, your healthcare team?
That my healthcare team have been wonderful. I know I say I live on PEI and I have been not suffered, but I don't have access to support groups and that type of thing. But being on the island, I think, worked for me, and the fact that it's a small town. My family doctor was also a family friend. She delivered both of my children. She was my doctor for 40 years. So she knew me inside and out. And as soon as I presented to her with my symptoms, she was right on top of it. Immediately referred me to a rheumatologist, and all of the wheels were in motion quite quickly. So I think I benefited from living in a small town to that respect, that we're not in a big city and I don't have many doctors. I had to travel to Moncton for years to see my rheumatologist. We didn't have one here. But I had just recently signed up with our new rheumatologist here in Charlottetown. He's very keen to follow me, just thrilled to have somebody local. Not that going to Moncton was really out of the way. It was an excuse to go to Costco. But other than that, I've had wonderful care. They've followed me closely. I am also sent routinely for the echocardiograms, pulmonary function tests. So I definitely feel that I have been well cared for.
Okay. Well, I have just one more question I'm going to ask our panel before we open up to the Q&A. And this is, what would you like people to know about scleroderma? So if people that don't know anything about scleroderma, what's the one thing, or in general, what would you like people to know about scleroderma? Kat.
It is a rare disease, but like all of us said, we don't have to fight it alone. There's the great Scleroderma Atlantic group, a lot of programs, and the doctors are fabulous, especially Trudy Taylor. So if anybody is alone, thinking that they're alone fighting this, that there are multiple avenues that they can go down to join a group or have help in any way that they need.
Great. Thanks, Kat. Jessie, how about you?
What I would like people to know is that there is life after this diagnosis, and you go through, I would call, the phases of grief, and then it's the grief at the loss of your health, and then you reach a stage where you calm down and you begin to move forward. And this disease can ravage people's bodies very badly, and then at the same time it can cause just moderate damage to other people. So it varies a lot, but it's manageable lots of time with your autoimmune suppressants and other required medications. And it can be helped by working on yourself through developing and practicing a positive spiritual and a mindful outlook. It really helps to join support groups and find a common ground with people that you can relate to. It takes away that isolated, alone feeling that you incur in having a rare, incurable disease. You will find new friends when you join.
Thanks, Jessie. Ken, anything that you would like people to know about scleroderma?
Well, it's mainly been just mentioned there, but it's an autoimmune disease that at present there's no cure. That's the most important thing. And I just want people to know that, looking at you or me and saying that, what's going on the outside is not actually what's going on the inside. And that goes for any rare disease. I think people look at you and say, oh, there's nothing wrong with him. He's just skinny. But, if they knew me before and after, I'm not the same person. So, yeah, I just think people need to, learn more about scleroderma. Matter of fact, in this community, people, they found it hard to pronounce the word, let alone know what scleroderma is. But it's a rare autoimmune disease, and
There's lots of subsets.
And there's lots of subsets, and we're working on it. Hopefully, in the future, they'll come up with some sort of cure. Maybe because of COVID and all the research that's going on, there will be a spin-off for scleroderma. Who knows? They're working on cell technology now, and we can still hope.
We can still hope, Ken. Thank you.
Keep going. You're welcome.
How about you, Barbara? What would you like people to know about scleroderma?
The majority of people that you meet don't know the word. They
Right.
have never heard of it when they say, whatever happened to you? Because with me, it's obvious. I know it, as soon as they see my hands, they ask, whatever happened to you? And I even had one girl in the grocery store ask me, quite innocently, were you born like that? With all of my fingers gone? And and when you're in a situation like that, you don't feel like I'm going through the checkout at a grocery store. I don't feel like I have the time to stand there and explain to her what scleroderma is and how it's affected me and how it can affect so many people in different ways. So I think education and things like these webinars are so useful to get the information out to people so they understand what scleroderma is. It's an autoimmune disorder. People understand, and I often say it to them, you know what diabetes is, you know what thyroidism is, you know rheumatoid arthritis, it's all autoimmune. But this one is just that little bit different. And so the fact that it affects everybody a little differently, it's quite devastating. It changes your body dramatically. Maybe someday there will be a cure, but in the meantime, we have to live with our treatments and deal with it as best we can. So yes, I think the main thing is just education. Get the word out so that it's a more commonly used term and people understand it.
Thank you. Thank you all for my questions that I had lined up before going to opening up. And it looks like we do have some questions. So I'm excited. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to, we're still learning the technology of this, but I do see we have some questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull those up and like I said, I'll ask the question and then whoever wants to answer, just kind of give me some. Okay, so the first one is, are there dietary limitations? And if so, what are they? Anyone want to answer that one? Ken?
Yes, well, in my case, yes, there is. And for instance, I cannot take any coffee or tea or pop or, so I'm basically following, it's called a FODMAP diet. FODMAP FODMAP diet. And if I stick to that, I'm pretty good, my GI system. But if I go off of it, for instance, I was told I did see some people at the QE2 about, dietary issues. And they said, if you're eating like honey has a 60-40 glucose and fructose, and it doesn't agree with me. But if I sweeten things with maple syrup, it's 50-50, and therefore my body can handle it. So that's my go-to treat, is a little.
The only treat, sweet treat.
Sweet treat. So yes, there are a lot. Like I said, going out to a restaurant is tough because I need plain food, not barbecued or soaked in. Onions are deathly to me, or garlic, and everybody wants to, flavor things with. The only thing I can seem to get away with was a little bit of salt and maybe some pepper. So I hope that answered that question. I'm not sure. Anybody else want to add in something?
Anyone else have any issues, dietary issues? Barb?
What I was wanting to mention is quite common with scleroderma is esophagitis, where your esophagus doesn't function properly. It doesn't have the motility to help move food down. So the biggest issue with that is texture. So you have to be pretty careful with what you eat, when you eat it. If you ate an apple, for instance, it's quite coarse and the texture is heavy. So it may take a long time for it to make its way down your esophagus. And you may end up with reflux and it coming back up. So you have to be very careful with what you eat, texture-wise. I developed, because of scleroderma, I also developed celiac disease, so I have the GI issues also. So your diet does become more limited when you're gluten-free. I've also developed lactose intolerance, so now the milk is off the menu. So, but with the biggest hurdle really was the texture of food. You had to really be careful about how much you eat, the texture of it, and how quickly you eat.
Thank you. I have a question that came in here to you, Kat. Do you have burning or itching, and do you have any tips on counteracting those skin issues?
I used to. It was mainly back when I first was diagnosed, and I went for light therapy, which helped a lot. Unfortunately, it is a form of tanning, so you can't always you can't just go to a tanning bed, and just assume that that's going to help. But sun definitely does help. Just regular outside sun. I always use sensitive skin moisturizing cream. I have done the steroid topical creams, but I found they thinned my skin more than anything. But any type of non-scented sensitive skin moisturizing cream, I generally use Aveeno. But also I take oatmeal baths. Just mainly just oatmeal and milk, and mix that in with the bath and soak in once or twice a week. And it definitely helps the itching and burning, because I've noticed that I grew up with eczema, and it has definitely progressed throughout the years. So the oatmeal baths definitely help.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kat. Another question here. So I guess the question is, how do you handle psychologically the aspect of wanting to do things such as volunteering, or but when the time comes, you don't have either the mental or the physical energy to do something. So what's that like when you know, you have an opportunity to volunteer, or someone's making a request of you, but the time comes and it's like, I can't do it. So what's that like? I mean, in terms of, how do you do that? Do you tend to not kind of?
I would think that if you were volunteering, or you had friends that you made commitments with, they would know this about you, that you do have an autoimmune, and some days your energy level is different. And, you know, with the best of intentions, you make a commitment, and they may have to be able to, and most likely they do, accept the fact that you may have to just change it at the last minute. You have no control of days that you're up or days that you're down. They just fall in. I think that's the way it would be.
Anyone else want to make a comment to that?
I read a while ago, it's self-care, and to be kind to yourself. And if you find yourself in a situation that you just can't do it, well, then accept that. Let yourself relax. People will understand. You don't have to feel obligated to do anything. If you have to wake up someday and it's just not a day that you can do it, then be kind to yourself. Let yourself have that time.
Good advice.
Good
Anything else
answer.
before I move on? Ken, did you want to say something?
No, I said that was a good answer.
Well, Ken says that's a good answer, Barb. I think so.
Great. I have many of those days.
Yeah. I think we're all similar in that. Okay, another question, and you might actually, you'll be able to answer this one.
Yeah.
It's directed to you mostly. Is there a noticeable difference between the U.S. John Hopkins and the Canadian scleroderma experts? Should a person seek out help? And so that's part one. And should patients seek out help outside of Canada? And is there a cost associated, or does our healthcare system cover that?
Okay, let's start with the cost part. First is that, yes, there is a cost associated with it. Unless you maybe once you are accepted to go to one of these places, I mean, we also have it here in Canada. Like you could go to Montreal if you know, I forget the name of the doctor, or Michelle, you probably know, but when my disease was early, I wanted a second opinion, and I wanted to go somewhere where they look at scleroderma patients daily.
And the subsets.
And they test for the subsets of the disease, and that took a while. It was a lab. The other thing is I got on a motility study there for a week. And I mean, that, you know, the cost.
That was all paid for.
The motility study in the hospital was paid for. It. My trip down and the hotel and our meals wasn't. Although, thanks to Trudy Taylor, who's my rheumatologist here in Halifax, she backed us and said that these tests are not available in Halifax, and I had to go out of the country. So therefore I could claim my medical expenses, which is not a great deal, but you could claim some of those on your income tax. So it helps a little bit, but you know, your life is worth something, I think. So if you don't exhaust your avenues to, you know, and you may regret it, that's all. I think that I'm alive because I went to the States, so.
I can say absolutely for that one.
That's my wife who's
And
sitting
speaking
off
in the back.
camera.
Now, I'm not in the picture, but I want to interject to the person that if they have like one of the, you know, main scleroderma subsets, I'm sure you can get just equally as good a treatment here. It's for those that perhaps, like my husband, who fell through the cracks because he wasn't an anti-centromere 70 or an SL70 or an anti-centromere. So therefore it was like, oh, you don't have scleroderma. And if it's a rare subset, it's very important to know what your subset is, because from there, that determines what you're at risk for.
Right.
So if you already know your subset, then the doctors here can equally treat you. But if not, then it's good to know what that is and how you can proceed.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanya.
Sorry to interject.
Thank you, Tanya. And I agree. And the reference to antibodies, I remember attending a conference myself, and the presenter had said, if there's one thing that you can do is find out your antibody, because it will then give some idea of what to monitor for, and it kind of then, like I said, lining up the proper test and so forth. So that makes sense. That's great. Thank you, Ken. So I guess for you, it was, in terms of that second part of the question, should a patient seek help outside of Canada?
Well,
yeah.
Again, I if it's available here, I think Calgary or Ottawa, is it Ottawa, or where's
Yeah.
Dr. Pope? Dr. Pope is here, but her waiting list was like a year or 2 years to get in. So, you know, by that time your disease has advanced to the point where maybe it's too late. So I wanted to go and have a second opinion, and it worked out for me, I think, that way.
Yeah. I guess the thing is if you'll do whatever you need to do to get the answers and treatment that's
Right.
available. Yeah.
Mhm.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. We have another question. Isn't this fun? It's actually working. It's working. We have another question. What is one of your biggest obstacles from scleroderma to a better quality of life? Biggest obstacle that you face today from scleroderma to a better quality of life?
Well, my biggest obstacle to start it off, I guess, is my GI system. And as I said before, you know, finding foods that my body can tolerate and I can feel good. I mean, I do have limitations with fibrosis, you know, Raynaud's and some other system swallowing. I'm not as bad as others, but
You have no motility.
you know, I have no motility, so I take motility drugs to keep things going along. But I found recently that we were doing some, because of COVID, we've changed our lifestyle. We're doing some yoga, some meditation, some of these things. There's one girl who does a yoga class, and I don't want to get off the floor in the final pose. I just feel like so relaxed. It's kind of been a good mental feeling. So I don't know about the others. I mean, that's my GI is one of my biggest issues.
Anyone else, your biggest obstacle that you have that keeps you having a better quality of life?
Well, I'll answer by saying my biggest obstacle was losing my fingers. So that has cut a lot out of my life, but you learn to adjust. You had learned to drive again. My fingers didn't all come off at the same time. It was a slow, over many years process. So you deal with, you lose one, you lose maybe a year later, you lose a couple more, a year later, you lose another. So it's just been such a work in progress, very painful experience. When you get to the point where you need to lose a finger, you've already been through over a year of acute pain. So you have to relearn things. You have after each surgery, I had to relearn to drive, relearn to how to use a knife and fork, get dressed, to do your hair. Everything is relearned. So it has definitely been a work in progress for me. It's been a painful experience, but at the same time, you do learn to see the things and learn from things you can learn to redo. And you're constantly learning and adjusting.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to check to see if we have any more questions. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Okay, wait now, one just popped up.
We answered that.
With no fingertips, how is your pain level now in your fingers or hands? Do you have any kind of phantom pain? I guess maybe that would be making.
Yeah, no, I've never had what they refer to as phantom pain. Your brain doesn't always let you accept the fact that they're gone. So you do tend to reach for things, expecting to be able to pick it up and realize you can't. You don't have that grasp anymore. I will advertise for Polysporin. I'm going to do a commercial. Polysporin is what has kept me sane over the years. It's the polysporin that has pain relief, that has lidocaine in it. And finger ulcers basically become like gangrenous. So it is very painful. It's acute pain that you can't sleep with. So, and rather than taking oodles of opioids or any kind of a strong painkiller, I reach for this. So anybody that has finger ulcers, anybody that there's a lot of pain, this is a whole lot better than using an opioid and getting hooked on painkillers. So it is painful. You do have, after you lose a finger, the pain does get better. But unfortunately, when you lose a finger, you start using another part of your hand. And so you can develop ulcers in other parts of your hands that you're using now. So the pain, it never really goes away, but you do deal with it as it comes. So right now I'm dealing with an ulcer that's quite painful, hopefully, and it's a very slow process to heal. You're talking months to have an ulcer heal. It's not days and weeks, it's months. So it is definitely a painful process, but it's all in how you deal with it. You have to stay positive.
Yeah, thank you, Barb. No other questions, but someone made a comment, and I'll just read that to you. Just thank you so much for the webinar. I just found out I have CREST syndrome. I don't know much about it, but the letter S stands for scleroderma. So was glad to join us today. So that's a good place perhaps for us to come to kind of our closing. It looks like we've done pretty good. Yay, successful.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.